So yeah, that was kind of the video short film that we created for as a video projection for the exhibition, which is where we took one of the water bags and kind of created an entire burial ceremony for it. We dug a hole and we buried the bag alive, and we celebrated the dying of water and recorded it using both photography and videography, and in that way celebrated the end of something which was almost too important for the human civilization to survive. There are some images that I like to share from the exhibition, which are both parts, which is the photographic part and the water bags. So I created these six podiums, which were installations in which my photographs that I had taken over time, which had a relationship with water in some way or the other, through a human connection or through an architectural connection, were kind of submersed in liquid that made it look like it was a fossil that had been found and preserved in chemical liquid after it was discovered by our future generations. So these would be objects that would be analyzed, or I was trying to create the analogy that these are the found objects that have been already discovered by the future generations and are now being displayed as objects to be analyzed or studied to understand what we were as a civilization by the future generations. So these are some of the photographs. These are the podiums, and the podiums were kind of translucent, so you could see it through one podium through the other, and there was two rows of podiums that you could walk through. And this was recently exhibited in Paris in a theater by a group of students at the Paris Dauphine University. And one of the boxes was sent as part of the display, where they wanted to represent some art that is relevant to the current Indian context, and Holding Water went as my entry as an artist. There is another video that I created, which is kind of a representation of what Holding Water is, and I'd love to share that with you guys. So this is the video.
Um, Trying to go back to this thing. So yeah, that was it, and I'd love to hear from you guys about what you think and or what you think about my work or any questions that you might have.
So we do have a question.
All right.
Okay, Mamta, go ahead, Mamta. You want to say something? Okay. So the question is there a reason to choose monochrome as a theme for the photographs, or was it just a personal choice?
It was a personal choice to make some photographs more ambiguous than the other. And sometimes I noticed that when I removed color from a photograph or I removed context from a photograph, I was able to kind of confuse about what the original space is like. So black and white helped with that. And that's why I went with black and white for some photographs.
Okay, we'll wait for a minute. If people have questions, we're open for them so that they can type in. We have another question that says, why should one distort the photographs?
Um, Only if you want to have fun with distortion. Again, this is something that is more post photographic. This is not related to the nature of photography. It's more about the nature of post photographic representation of architecture, or maybe not architecture, maybe anything. Um, I think there is a certain age to every art. For example, when photography was invented, people announced that painting is dead because they believe that photography kind of killed the whole intention of painting, which is to replicate something that they saw in real life, and nothing could be as accurate as a photograph. But we are at a point where renders have started looking more real than photographs, and sometimes you cannot tell if an image is a render or of an actual image of the real building. So maybe it's time to question about how we can play with photography now instead of trying to hold on to the sacred nature of photography, and that's why I kind of distorted some of my photographs.
That's very interesting. We also have a compliment that says, I think your work has a lot of insight and is really amazing.
Thank you, unknown anonymous user.
All of these are anonymous.
Yes.
Another one, it's interesting that you're documenting photos for the future, but also distorting them. Is there a reason? Okay, it's the same one. Is there a reason for distorting?
In some cases, I wasn't really distorting it even. Like some cases, I was just maybe showing the photograph in a different medium. For example, submerging it in fossil liquid, or like presenting it in a different way from how we are used to viewing photographic prints, so that there is some change of pace in which we reimagine photography in a different way, about how it can interact with three dimensionality, or it can interact with being a sculpture. Maybe a photograph doesn't have to be a thin sheet of paper that has four corners. Maybe it can be inside a box. Maybe it can be submerged into a liquid. So there are some questions to ask about how we present the photograph inside the box while thinking outside the box, I guess.
Thanks. Another question that says, do you use the traditional dark room method of developing the photos, or do you use the digital one?
I mostly click digital images. I did do a little bit of film photography when I was in Spain. I've been wanting to pick up my grandfather's camera and try to understand it. It is a very old Argus camera, but yeah, I've been a little lazy about it. But I would love to see what I can do with images that I managed to click on a film camera and how they might be post photographic in nature.
Okay. And we have another one that says great work. And how important do you think photography is for explaining an architectural project?
Um, I would say I wouldn't take photography of a project very seriously because I don't know, like I think we're at a point where we have been taking all projects too seriously, and myself included. I think I'm a culprit here. Because of photography, I think we put too much pressure in the experience of a building being completely visual. And I think maybe it could be cool to go old school and try to actually bring back the walking around of experiencing a building into the experience of a space. Like maybe there is a way that photography could aid in making the experience of a building three-dimensional again. And I know that virtual reality is a solution for that, but maybe we haven't explored it in a very exciting way for architecture photography. I would say it is important, but I think sometimes a building cannot be represented with photos, and it can only be experienced in person. And it's more about the feeling that the building creates, and maybe photography is not the best medium to represent that. There have been projects like the residence that I recently shot, which is a house with 49 trees, where I felt like video and film conveyed the idea better than all the photographs put together.
That's very interesting, actually. And another one coming in, when you showed a particular part of a photo instead of the whole thing, is there anything that made you zoom in on that particular part?
I wish I knew, like, had like this preemptive idea about what I was doing when I was trying to find a smaller part in an image that was more interesting than the bigger image after a point. But actually, no, I think it's more about trying a hidden trial method and trying to, imagine the photograph from every angle or in every light or in every fold possible along lines if you see some geometry in it. So at one point you might arrive at a solution that makes you go eureka and maybe you stick with it.
Okay. Another question. What inspired you to shift your discourse from architecture to photography?
There was a paper that I wrote as part of my research dissertation paper, which I think all architecture students have to write, which is something that I wrote about architecture photography, which is about the paradoxes in architecture photography. Through that, I was trying to question the nature of architecture photography now and the relevance of architecture photography in India, and also trying to understand if there are you could say ideas or concepts that photography that can convey about a space that the space is not able to convey itself or does not want to concern itself with. And maybe that opens up new avenues about how we can experience space. Again, it's about trying to expand the experience that a viewer can have with a building. And maybe if a photograph was not just the vision of the architect, but it also had the vision of the photographer, or it had an added vision which was a collaboration between both, you would be able to see something which is more than just the building in its documentative state. So that's why I got really interested in photography, and that's when I kind of took it up to learn photography and try to pursue photography that was different from what I was seeing around me, which is a lot of documentary photography of architecture. And I thought maybe there is a opportunity here to present architecture from a new light.
Okay, I think with that we'll close in the questions. I think your encounter was really interesting, very unique one for us, and I'd like to thank you for joining in with us
Thank you
and
so much.
giving us this fabulous encounter.
Thank you. I had a good time.